Hello everyone, this is Shankar. Welcome to the Selenium 3.0 plus the continuous integration and continuous deployment tools orientation session 2. The session 1, I have kind of walked you through what we're going to learn in the overall course. Like precisely these are the different tools that we're going to look at. It's not just about the Selenium tool, it's also learning the version control system like Git and GitHub, build management tool like Apache Maven, continuous integration tool like Jenkins, test-driven development or acceptance test-driven development or behavior-driven development related tools like Cucumber, and also understanding how Selenium can be extensible to develop a framework. We'll look at robot framework that has been developed on top of it. Precisely, if you have to go into Selenium, these are the different topics that we're going to look at, as I told you. A quick intro of the WebDriver that I have done in orientation 1. You should watch that video in detail if you have missed session 1. So there are various topics that we're going to look at, and precisely I have put through that in a schedule. So if you have to look at the kind of overall schedule, so this is how the complete schedule is going to look like. You can consider the first session that I have done is more of an introduction, like the session 1 that I have done, where I have walked you through all the different Selenium components from the 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. So the previous video again will help you in understanding all those details. And IDE is something which is integrated development environment, which is kind of a record and playback kind of a tool. Ideal way to start is to work with this tool first, get more familiar with how Selenium identifies the locators, how do we create a script by recording and looking at the format of the script, and that script can be converted into either Java, Python, C Sharp, Ruby on Rails, whatever the format that we want. This tool will provide an extensive export option, convert option through which we can do it. But unfortunately, in real time, this is not going to be used much. So if you see a lot of real-time implementations, they won't be using an IDE. It's more like getting familiar with the Selenium tool itself. So, and one more, bad news is that with the latest version of Firefox, this particular tool is kind of a broken. So the people are working on fixing this to the maximum so that in the next version of the Firefox it can actually be available. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to try to deprioritize this a little bit, and once the fix is available with the latest version, we'll come back and see how IDE works and how we can actually do it. But if I have to just show you, typically it looks something like this. If you go here, there is an option called there's an option called developers, and there is something called Selenium IDE, just to show you. And here you will have the simple recording option, and you just start recording on your application. It will generate the commands and kind of a locator that you are working on and the value that you are entering or selecting or whatnot from the text box or a button or a list box or a checkbox, etc. And it generates a simple code, and later on you can actually export that test cases into whatever the format you want: C Sharp, Java, Ruby, Java JUnit format, etc. But right now it's broken. Like for example, if I try to add a new command, I can actually do it just by selecting the test case, or even if I try to do a new test case. Yeah, that's what Ben. What is happening right now is if you would have, definitely you would have the latest version of Firefox, and the latest version of the Firefox, this ID is broken, so it's not even coming up. Like when I try to do this, you can see you're getting an error here. There is an unexpected error. So this tool is completely broken. Okay, So we need to wait for the fix to come, and then it should be okay. And why they are not fixing it on a priority basis? As I told you, it is not very, it's not very much used in real time. It's majorly to only to get you familiarized with how Selenium understand the commands, etc., etc. To just get familiar with the script format, and with the click of a button, you can actually export into different formats, all those things. But when it developed, it has its own some of the important features, like you can even schedule these tests to run periodically, like every Sunday, Monday, or every day, or every hour. It's like part of, you can just schedule it and the scripts used to run automatically. And there are a lot of other good features. Whoever will start with Selenium, actually this is the best tool to start with to get familiar. But it will be still in our scope of discussion. We are going to talk about it. But only thing is, right now it's broken, so I'm going to deprioritize what I'm supposed to do from day to today to the next 4 sessions. So rather than, we will be directly starting with these components. So once we understand IDE, we are going to work with the WebDriver, and here is a plan. If we plan to do it in a 90-minute session, this is how this is going to go. And if we do it in a 60-minute session, typically it's going to go like this. So I gave the full schedule. I'm going to share you with you guys at the end of the meeting, that this is a full list. So if you just go into the, you have for example, definitely I'll be covering the Java language as well. So I will be covering, as we try to do different activities, but whatever is still left from the language point of view, I'll be still covering about 3 sessions on by now. What happens by the time when we go to day 3, if we go into 90-minute session, or whatever this total comes up here, maybe around 30-35 sessions, when we come over here, you will be left with very few options of Java that you don't know, and I will be taking up 3 consecutive sessions to cover up Java as well. Okay, but ideally, when we are going to do all these things, right, the first thing that I'm planning to do, if possible today itself, is like we'll talk about how we install and configure Eclipse, creating a basic Java example, and how do we configure the WebDriver to the Eclipse so that uh, it can have the methods and everything to be available for start creating it. So that's one solid 90-minute session is going to take. And then we're going to look at how Selenium identifies different locators. Like I discussed this in the day 1 as well. There are 8 different options by which Selenium identifies it, like by ID, by name, class name, CSS, XPath, link text, partial link text, etc. And this I'm looking at one full 90 minutes, but if we go into 60 minutes somewhere, it will take 2 to 3 sessions actually. The reason, because this XPath alone, we're going to spend one full day understanding different XPath writing options, absolute XPath, relative XPath, and then how do we practice those, because in the interview and all, people would ask you, hey, here is my HTML source code, uh, and they'll show you one of the control and they'll ask you to write an XPath for it. So we're going to practice a good number of examples on how do we do it. Yeah, 60 minutes would be good. So that's what we're going to do. Probably only thing, if we do it in 60 minutes, the total is going to be a little high. Like I'll just show you. Don't get scared by this. It will not be exactly this, but we need a proper 50 sessions to understand the full-fledged Selenium tool, apart from these Maven, Jenkins, etc. These would need another 10 days easily. So it's going to go into almost 60 sessions. So what I'm going to do, I'll make it up a mix. Okay, sometimes whenever we have certain flow that we can cover it up, we'll cover up in like 70-80 minutes. And some days, if everything works out for us, yeah, so if everything works out for us, we'll come and meet for like on a weekend, if everybody's okay. We'll try to cover up so that we'll be able to do that in the 45 sessions overall, but no compromise on the topics. We're going to cover all these in detail. Okay, so that's what I'm planning to do it in. If you're going to go with 90 minutes in day 6, probably that is uh, the next immediate session, I would say. If you're done with all these things, after that, immediately we're going to do this. Then we're going to look at how do we. Yes, I mean, all this I'm going to walk you through on different applications. I'm associated with a couple of other applications that we can walk through. We can use them, and at the end of it, especially when I develop these frameworks, like there are special sessions you can see where we are going to develop data-driven framework, keyword-driven framework, hybrid framework. When we do all these things, definitely we are going to take it as like a it's like an application and do it. Take it like a project and do it. So that will be there. But let me just skim through this whole schedule so that people who would like to join it from the next one will get a complete picture of what we are going to learn and how we are going to learn. So that's what is a day 6. We're going to do it. And in day 7, we're going to work with different locators. Like when a project is given to you, when an application is given to you, suppose, let's say you go to one of the websites. So this is a known friend of mine actually runs this business. So it's an online pharmaceutical um, uh, website. Suppose if you have to go into this, typically what you see here, you see a text box, you see a link, you see a search text box, and when you're going to go log in, you'll see a text box again. There is another text box, there is a checkbox, and if you click on forgot password, again you would see some option to enter your email address. So look into any of these, and then there is a list of items with certain images. There are a list of products available, right? So, and there is a shopping cart. So you take any project, typically what you can see is there are different types of controls. Like one thing, you will see text box, a list box, a radio button, a check button. Then we are going to look at how do we work with pages, how do we work with frames, how do we work with pop-ups that are going to come. So there are different controls that we have to look at. So I think what I did is working with frames, HTML tables. I am taking it separately. So I'll make sure it's removed from here so that we align to the schedule clearly. So, and again, when we go into locator, control is the same thing. So there are in automation terminology we simply call it as control, but in the word of Selenium, people actually call it as locator precisely. Okay. And for example, if you take list, let's say text box, then we'll look at various examples on it. How can I enter a value to a text box? How can I read the value from a text box? Before even entering a value, before even a reading value, typically if you look into a framework code, so the idea is that from the beginning itself, we'll train it in such a way that you will be part of the framework development, not part of the framework consumption side of it. So for example, yes, edit box, text box, input box, all are same. So if you have a text box, and typically in a framework code, how we are going to write it is we just don't go and write a code in such a way that just enter the value into the framework. Rather than what we are going to do is we are going to write a first line of a code to first check whether the text box is present or not. If that is successful, then we'll write if the text box is enabled or not. If the text box is enabled, then you are going to write a line to, in Selenium we have something called send keys method to enter the value here. So like that, we're going to write it in a function. Let's say function something like set text value or whatever. And this will require two things. What is a locator that you're going to work, and what is a value that you're going to enter. And within the function, you're going to write this definition. So like this, each control, there are various operations you're going to do it, like text box is present or not, enabled or not, then I can enter the value or not, how to read the value from a text box. And when we go to list box, then you'll have totally a different story. What are the different items that are there in the list box? Is the list box is a single selection list box or a multi-selective list box? How can I select an item from a list box? What are all the items that are present in the list box? How can I see all the options that are there in the list box? I'm looking for a very specific value. can this value is present in the list box. So all through this, we are going to do a coding, and the code is going to check and give you whether the test case is passed or failed. So how many options are there in the list box? What are those values? Just probably print it out into a separate file, or check a particular value present or not, or select a value from that list box, or do a multi-selection from that list box. So all those kind of things that we're going to look at. The moment we go into radio buttons, how many radio buttons are there? And then is that particular radio button has been selected or not? If not, how to select it? So those kind of examples we'll see. And same case with check buttons. How many different check buttons are there? Network. Hey, Sean, Ben, can you hear me good? I know there was an audio loss for some time. Can you all hear me good? I know there was a hiccup on the audio. It's lost for a few seconds. Just want to check, can you all hear me good? You can't hear me, okay. How about it now? I see it's re-established. The connection has been re-established. Can you all hear me good? Ben, can you hear me? Sean, can you hear me? Can you all hear me good? Is audio clear? Hey, apologies. Looks like there was a connection has been disconnected and then it's restored. Can you all hear me good now? Is the audio and the screen is clear? Can one of you confirm, please? Is it breaking up? Is not at all clear? Sean, how about you? Can you hear me properly? How about it now? Should be fine, I guess. Can you hear me good now? Looks like should be fine now. Can you all hear me good? How about now? Can you hear me, Ben? All right. Just want to check. Can you all? Is it good now? Okay. Okay. Sorry for that. Looks like there was a connection has been restored from my end. Okay. So let's continue. What I was trying to say is that when you work on usually it will not be like this. I don't know what's happening. How about it now? You can hear me good, right? Okay, fine. Even my main network got restored now, so everything should be fine. All right. So what I was saying is these are the different controls that you're going to look at. We'll see various examples on how do you work with list box, then radio buttons, check boxes. How do you work with links that are available on different pages? We'll see various examples on in a page how many links are there. We'll find out the links count. We'll go to a particular link and check whether this link is enabled. If enabled, can we click on this? So various examples on different controls like push buttons. So push buttons is one another thing. So that's kind of looking at on different controls, and then there are different browser commands and navigation commands, etc. Like you can get the title of the browser, you can get the source code of the browser, source code of the page. You can get various other informations related to the browser. You can do a refresh of the page. You can navigate to different other URLs from one URL to the other URL. So we'll look at all those commands in precisely day 8. And then we're going to look at synchronization options. Like in any automation, typically this is a very common problem that happens. The problem is that, so you will have your automation script. This is your automation script you developed. There are a couple of lines, and here is your application. What happens when you run the program, it will just go line by line. Let's say there is a particular line, like, after first line is to enter some value, second line is to select something from a drop down, third line is to select something from a checkbox, fourth line is to do something on a grid or a table kind of thing, and then you will click on a button. Okay, after click on a button, the next step is to check some confirmation message has been arrived or not. That is your next step. But after you perform this click of a button, what can happen is that your application might take some time to validate all your inputs are correct inputs or not. If any of the input is not correct, throw the error message. So it takes some time to validate. Let's say your application takes about 30 seconds to validate. But your program does not know that. Your program will simply go line by line, line by line. And let's say after performing this step, which is clicking on this link, now it is checking for the message is present or not, but the message is going to come only after 30 seconds. So you need to make your program to wait for 30 seconds so that the message will arrive and you can actually go and check whether the message is present or not. If you can't wait your program, if you don't make your program to wait, then it is not a correct scenario, because obviously if you go and check it immediately, the message will not be there and your test case will fail. So what is happening here is your program and your application are not in sync. Program is going fast or in the normal phase, your application needs to wait. So then we are going to use some commands called synchronization commands here. And in Selenium, we have two types of synchronization, like implicit wait and explicit wait kind of synchronization commands. So we're going to look at both of them in detail with an examples on how do we do. So that's going to be our day 9. And then we'll look at different examples on a web page, buttons. I think I've already written here, but precisely we're going to look at here. Okay, examples to identify all the links on a web page, all the buttons on a page. So there is, if somebody know a bit of a Selenium, to identify a locator, we have a method called find element. Okay, apart from find element, there is something called find elements also. So we're going to use this find elements. Like, I think I can show, I have a bit of Selenium code that generally comes. And if you're familiar a bit of it, so here we are using find element. But in case of this, you will also have, I'm going to show all these things from the next session. Don't worry on that. Then there is something called find elements also. So if you go into the find elements method, then we're going to look at how many links are there in the web page, how many buttons are there in the web page, how many list boxes are there in the web page, and how can we work with them. So we're going to look at all those examples here. Then we'll look at how can we okay, here's a I was actually looking for TestNG framework. Okay, then we'll look at how do we read and write the data from Excel files. Probably I'll switch the orders a little bit when we go into it. I'll try to discuss these two after day 10, 11 and 12. Probably I'll talk about JUnit framework, TestNG framework, how we're going to work it. JUnit is majorly the unit testing framework, but still a lot of people use it in Selenium. Then we'll talk about a TestNG framework, which is predominantly used by all the automation team members. And there are various annotations that are part of it. So we are going to look at different examples. And even in TestNG parameter, you can also pass parameters. So we look at how do we pass parameters, how do we create a data-driven test in TestNG framework. So we're going to look at the complete framework and what are the different options. Of course, reporting, how the reports gets generated, etc. And then we're going to look at how do we read and write the data from Excel files using is JUnit used for unit testing of automation scripts? Correct. So after, no, not of automation script. You can use it if you want, you can use it for that way. But JUnit is majorly used after the developers write the code. To do the unit testing of the code, they use JUnit. Is that clear? Okay. So we'll see how do we use Apache PY. So this is basically using Apache POI jar files. So precisely how do we work with the Excel files to read and write data from Excel files. Then we'll see how can we do a data-driven framework. So now that we know how to read and write to a Excel file, so we'll take a sample application, something like maybe you have a sign-in kind of a form or a registration form, and where we'll be testing with like different set of records, maybe 100, 200 records. Then we'll see how do we work with the different alerts, pop-up windows, etc. when we're going to do, and then how do we work, how do we handle windows and dynamic windows that are going to come. Like in web applications, it's pretty common. Dynamic windows will keep popping up. So how do we take care of them? And typically your web page is collection of various frames. So if there are frames, how are we going to do that? We're going to go into the frames details. Then how do we work with HTML tables or web tables? How can we read the data from a table? How can we check a particular value present in the table? All those examples we're going to do in that. And then there is an action clause which is very famous in WebDriver. So we'll see how we can perform different actions using the action class. Precisely, we'll try to take a screenshot. This is going to be very useful when you automate the test cases. If something goes wrong, if some test case fails, you may wanted to take a screenshot of that, what happened there, right? So this example is going to help you how you can actually take a screenshot. Then I already talked about JUnit and TestNG. Then we'll talk about Selenium Grid. Um, this is basically for parallel execution on multiple multiple nodes with different browsers, different operating systems, etc. Okay, so apart from the common Firefox browser, we're going to run it on various other browsers. And then we'll look at how can we do database testing. So now Java can connect to database using JDBC. So how can we actually write some examples on reading the data from the database, writing the data to the database, checking certain things. So those kind of examples we're going to look at. And then it's a very famous page object model or page factory. This is like a very advanced kind of framework that a lot of people are using now. Apart from the TestNG framework, we're going to look at this framework. How can we create, so suppose if your application has 10 different pages, you're going to create 10 different classes in your package, and in each class you will take all the controls and the methods, all the controls that are present in the page, and then you write all the methods related. For example, if I'm going to automate this, I will write one class for home page, one for products, one for health issues, one for medical gadgets, and one for sale. I'm going to create my package with 5 different classes, and all the controls that are or locators available in the home page, I'm going to take it in home page class. All things that are present in products, I'm going to take it in products, health issues like that. And what kind of operations I'm going to do, like similarly, I'll take one class for login or register. So, and then in login or register, I'll go to, let's say, sign up, and then I'm going to take all these fields in my login class or a sign up class, and then all the operations, like test with all valid inputs, test with invalid email ID, test with the invalid phone number, test with the password, test with the incorrect password. So we'll try all those things in each class of a page, and that's called page object model. So it's a very famous, and a lot of people are actually implementing the page object model in today's world. Then, so when I was actually talking through all these things, right, when I talked through all the WebDriver examples, we're going to use almost all the Java basic fundamentals, like how do we declare a variable, how do you write a class in Java, how do you write an if condition statement in Java, how do you write a for loop in Java, how do you throw an exception, how do you catch an exception and try to throw it. All those fundamentals will be covered when we do it over here. How do we write select case kind of commands for the keyword driven framework point of view. So most of the fundamentals would be cleared by when we look at these examples within these days, but still there will be certain things like we're going to spend 3 sessions on it to understand what are the major other things that are required from a Java language point of view. Since anyway I'm going to cover data-driven framework here, I think this is more like you can leave it. It's already explained, but in a framework development point of view. So when you go and join in a company, nowadays the challenge is that people are not expecting, or people are not just considering who just know the automation. They are kind of looking for people who can develop framework from the scratch. So we're going to look at how data-driven framework can be done, keyword-driven framework can be done, and how a hybrid framework can be done. So we're going to look at these three different on probably same project or a different project depending on the projects available at that particular point of the time. And then in the world of Java, people use this log4j for logging, error logging. So when you write an automation program, for each pass step, fail step, you need to have a proper logging. So we're going to do a log4j session on how do we actually do the logging for it. And this is where the Selenium point of view topics will be completed. So then we're going to spend on good discussion on frequently asked questions, and then we'll see how you can actually prepare your resume, or I can shift these topics a little bit down, and we can do it after even understanding the CICD tools. So apart from Selenium 3.0, we're going to look at CI/CD tools as I was talking about. Apache Maven is basically for your build management. Jenkins is for your continuous integration and deployment tool. And then we're going to look at concepts like what is a test-driven development, what is an acceptance test-driven development. Apart from the regular waterfall and agile, these three are kind of very popular in the market. So we're going to understand what is behavior-driven development. And then we look at Cucumber tool as such, how it can be used for BDD, then robot framework. So this is so detailed. These are the day-wise. Of course, when we start in the beginning, we're not going to spend 90 minutes because you need to go back and set up the things that are required and practice, etc. So up to few sessions, we're going to go only 60 minutes. So later on, probably we're going to get into like 70, 75 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes. So anywhere it will go easily, like 30 plus 10, 40 sessions is what we need overall. Okay. This is one aspect of it, and kind of documents that I'm going to share you. There are various examples that I have already I've been teaching it for a while. Yeah, you're very right. With 3.0, robot framework is still not available. Robot framework is available with only 2.0. So, but I just wanted to kind of show you not many sessions, probably just 2 sessions, kind of show you how somebody can extend the Selenium library to develop a tool. Okay, and that way you can even, I mean, I'm not saying that you will go back and try out the jobs only on the robot framework, but just to kind of give you how the framework can be extensible, Selenium can be extensible to the level that somebody can write a program, and as well as it was popular for some time, and now people are developing their own framework. So when you see that, you might get some idea of how a framework development can happen. So I know a lot of the companies that I know, they are also trying to do something similar to what is available in robot framework. So I'll just show you how that can be extended. That's the whole idea of it. And if you see, these are the various files that I'm going to share you just to give you an idea. Like all these things that I have just talked about it is already available. Maybe since I opened it multiple times, might be available there. But for example, let's say Selenium WebDriver. If I go over here, then all these notes kind of thing, like to understand what is WebDriver, how you can actually create different examples on it, and what are the different WebDriver commands that I'm talking about. Each one of them already have these kind of an examples, and then sometimes whatever I teach in the class, I just copy paste into these kind of Google documents so that finally it becomes a full-fledged document like this. And then and this will be also good knowledge base for you. Like for example, when you're trying to do something, when you get a struck in between, you can always come back to this document. Ye- can you hear me now? uh, can you all hear me now? Hey, can you hear me now? I'm really sorry. I don't know what's happening. There's a climate change for the last couple of days here. There's a heavy rains, due to which I think there are some disturbances in the network. I'll ensure this is not going to be a problem. So, kind of, you can see whatever I actually wanted to teach. So, whatever I actually wanted to teach is already kind of already been taught many sessions to many different forums, and everything is already available as an example. So all I'm going to do is going to share it as needed. After discussing that in the class, I will be sharing these documents as well. All right. How about it now? Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now, Ben? Okay. Yeah, I think looks like there are some hiccups in the network today, very badly. So everything is already like I was trying to talk about the synchronization. So those examples, and then I was talking about these find and find elements. So examples for that. All right, so you can see all these examples have already been taught and documented. So how do we work with drop downs? How do we work with different, uh, basically to check all the items in a list box? Uh, yes, yes, I'm still there, and it's fluctuating very badly today. Yeah. All right. So what I was trying to say is this is a schedule in which we're going to go, and for all these things, you're going to get class examples, and then already these are documented in a Word document that I'm going to share. All right. So that's it probably for today because one is I wanted to. Yeah, yeah, I know. Whenever there's a reconnection has been established, I know it. I did not talk much. Like what I was trying to say is everything is already. All right. So what we can do is that's all for now. Just try to. I'll share this topics with you guys. Yeah. Those documents, even if I give you now, you will not be understanding anything unless I cover those examples in the class. So once I talk about each topic, going to then I'm going to give you the access to all of them. All right. So that's all for now. So people who are looking for the detailed training of all these topics, please reach out to me on my email ID shanker s3softglobal at gmail.com, and looking forward for the detailed training as soon as from Monday itself. So please reach out to me. People are looking for the detailed training on this. All right. Thanks everyone.